Years ago, a fierce battle took place, the Cavalry War. Now 30 years have passed since that battle. The wise Empress, Hela Rose, went insane. Dark clouds hung over the great Kyle Empire that used to shine with 5 centuries of grand history. Her loyal subjects were accused of being traitors and executed. Only those who were able to twist their tongues to flatter Hela were able to survive. An injured and bleeding man, dressed in a robe, is being dragged by guards. He huffs and pants in exhaustion while the Empress sits on her throne in front of him. She calls him Yuma and says that he enticed Malin Zark into committing treason. She asks him if this statement was correct. Yuma says yes and then tells her that he's just a mere eunuch who has no family or power unlike other aristocrats. Then he asks if it could be that the Empress is afraid. One of the guards turns angry and heads towards Yuma, asking how he could dare to say such a thing to Her Majesty. Hela says it's fine and tells Yuma there's nothing more she needs to hear and orders the guards to behead him. Yuma wonders if this is the end. Pulling out a blue-colored berry from his robe, he thinks that if he's going to die, he might as well try his luck. This fruit was given to him by a man while saying that it's called the fruit of regression. It has the power to bring someone back to the past. The man says he doesn't know how many years it would take him back, so it's all up to luck. He also tells Yuma that he would die as soon as he ate it. Kneeling before Hela, Yuma discreetly eats the berry while thinking how Hela used to be intelligent and beautiful. He wonders what changed her to become this way and what made her so fearful. Then Yuma tells the Empress to always stay healthy. Suddenly, he starts to cough out blood. Hela watches in shock and worry as everything goes dark for Yuma. When he opens his eyes, he's laying down in a meadow. He shoots up in realization, sees some fish hanging, and recognizes the place to be Peril, Yuma's homeland. He then sees a container of water nearby. He looks at his reflection in the water and is shocked that he's back 40 years in the past. Yuma clearly remembers what happened 40 years ago, which is what happened yesterday. As he walks around, he sees Mr. Hacker relaxing beneath a tree. Yuma tells him that Malin's been bad again. Hacker asks Yuma who he beat up this time. Yuma says it was the fish shop owner, Cage. Yuma then says to not scold Malin much because Cage was beat up for talking bad about Haka. Getting up, Haka asks Yuma where Malin is. Yuma says he's probably napping on the beach. Walking to the beach, they both find him lying on the shore. Looking at him, Yuma thinks how it's been so long since he saw his friend. And Mr. Haka was the one who raised Yuma, an orphan. Meanwhile, Mr. Haka is hitting Malin and pulling his ear while saying that he told him not to fight with civilians. Yuma is enjoying being back, but he knows that this isn't the time to rejoice as the world will soon be swept into war, and all the things he loved would be destroyed. However, it's different now, and if need be, Yuma would climb up to the highest position to protect everything dear to him. Yuma thinks that first he would protect his manhood. He still clearly remembers the day he lost it. Miro, the knight who turned him into a eunuch. He was also called Immortal Miro. His secret to immortality was his top-notch flattery skills. Before Yuma's regression, Miro came to his hometown around this time. He enjoyed feeling superior watching Malin and Yuma practice sword fighting. He told them he would write a recommendation if they won against him. Malin and Yuma were excited and nervous to spar with a real knight. However, they ended up defeating him as his swordsmanship was nowhere near his flattery skills. Then, he promises he would write them recommendations, but something that's more fitting for them than a knight. That's how Yuma became a eunuch and Malin became Miro's student. Yuma was able to gain the Empress' favor and power because he was eunuch, but he had to endure the disdain from aristocrats and even peasants. Yuma thinks there won't be any more humiliation as he would protect himself this time. Miro would arrive at the village the next day, so Yuma knows that he can't let him meet Malin, or else they would have a duel and it's highly likely that Malin would win, so Yuma has to prevent them from meeting each other. Suddenly, Malin barges into his room and excitedly says that a knight is coming to the fish shop tomorrow and tells him that they both should go see him. He then says that they should ask the knight to teach them as he might write a recommendation if they did well. Yuma tries to coax him out of it by saying that they shouldn't disturb him as he's coming here to take a break. Malin asks Yuma when else would they ever see a knight and is adamant about meeting him. Yuma retorts by saying that lessons from Mr. Haka are enough. Malin replies that his father doesn't teach properly and shoulder throws Yuma. Yuma says that he would show him who's superior and asks him to do as he says. After he has Malin pinned down, Yuma asks Malin to obey him and is relieved that he's avoided danger. The next day, Miro is in the village, telling a story about how he defeated someone. Malin is listening to it attentively and in awe. Yuma is by his side, upset that they're here. Miro then says that he likes them both and that he was right to listen to Cage's advice. In his mind, Yuma curses Cage. Miro says he heard Yuma and Malin learn swordsmanship and asks them to show him. Malin immediately says that it would be an honor to do so. while Yuma thinks that he would become a eunuch if Malin wins, so he decides to make him lose no matter what. Malin grabs his sword and Yuma comes up behind him and asks him to lose. Malin replies that he wouldn't be able to win against Miro, but he would try his best. Yuma simply states that he is gonna win but he should lose, and says that he would kill him if he won. Malin says Yuma is overestimating him and happily heads to the duel. Yuma and Mr. Haka watch the fight take place. Miro asks Malin to show him how much he's learned. Saying that he would do his best, Malin rushes forward and knocks Miro's sword out of his hand, sending it flying and landing on the ground beside him. Yuma screams at Malin, asking him how he could attack by distracting Miro by screaming first, and says that someone like him has no right to train with a knight. Yuma continues to yell, hoping his plan works, but Miro tells him to not be mean. He says that Yuma is right, but being a coward can be a method too. Hearing this, Yuma is happy that his plan worked. Miro then says that luck is a skill and being a coward is also a skill, and he would show them real skill as a compliment. Yuma wonders if Miro actually had skills. He tries to show off his skills, but nobody is impressed. Even Mr. Haka says Yuma could kill him right now if he wasn't an aristocrat. Miro then shows them something called his sword aura and Yuma claps, saying that it's awesome. Mr. Haka then thanks Miro for giving them his time and asks him to join him for some beer as he might be thirsty, and Miro says it sounds good. He then compliments Haka by saying that he's a good teacher. After they both leave their sight, Yuma and Malin burst out laughing at Miro's skills. Yuma picks up a sword and does the sword aura and says that it's not difficult at all, whereas Miro was wheezing for 5 minutes trying to do this. Yuma and Malin lay on the grass and talk about how Haka took Miro away because they got uncomfortable, and decide to go to him in a bit. Yuma then thinks to himself that he did it. It's different from his past life now. He also decides to protect other things too from now. Miro is drinking beer with Haka and says that the beer is great but something's missing. Mr. Haka asks what it is, and before Miro can reply, Maria brings them fish. Yuma and Malin wait outside, debating if they should go in. Yuma says that something feels off. Inside, Miro tells the woman she's pretty and asks her to sit with him. He asks her how old she is and comments that her hands are small and plump. She tries to brush him off by saying that she's busy. Miro asks what she means as the store is empty. Malin and Yuma watch in anger, and Yuma thinks that Miro needs a good thrashing in this life. Miro tells the girl that she's trembling and she should be used to this as she's a war orphan, and then says that there's a reason why Cage is using her. The Kyle Empire has a distinct hierarchical society. If Haka acted carelessly, everyone would be in danger. So, in his mind, Haka apologizes to Maria. Maria is crying, and the moment a teardrop falls to the ground, a sword lands in its place. Everyone looks up in shock to see Malin and Yuma storming in. Malin screams at his father, asking him why he's just watching in silence. Miro says to Haka that his son has misunderstood. Malin demands to know why he's doing nothing while Miro is screwing with Maria. Miro says that he thought Malin had a good spirit, but it was just that he was rude, and asks Haka to discipline his child. Malin says that Miro is the one that needs to be disciplined, pulling out his sword. He goes to attack Miro but is stopped by Haka. Yuma also tells him that Haka is right and that he shouldn't do this. Yuma says it would be hard to control the situation if he killed him. Miro comments how he's talking shit now, whereas before, he was afraid of sparring. The next moment, Miro sees Yuma with his sword, harnessing the sword aura, ready to fight. Miro tells him that he would be beheaded if he assaulted a knight. Yuma says that they would see who would be getting beheaded later. But before he can do anything, he is slapped by Haka, who calls him a rascal. But Yuma pays no heed and attacks Miro. As Miro lays fallen on the ground, Haka is angry at Yuma. Yuma, however, feels refreshed that he finally got to hit him, but thinks that he needs to take care of the aftermath. He then asks Maria to go to the Lord because if she told him she was sexually assaulted by Miro, he would protect her. Turning towards Miro, Yuma is not done yet. He says Miro needs more beatings. A few moments later, Miro's face is beaten and battered up by Yuma. Miro threatens them, saying that they would be beheaded for assaulting a knight, and that he's going to go tell the guards. Yuma replies that they'll be happy to know a knight was beaten up by someone inferior. Yuma also says that they're already unhappy that a commoner knight can't become a knight for the nobles, so they might use this chance to drive him out. He concludes by saying that since they can use sword aura, they'll let them go as they welcome commoners with talent. He then goes up close to him and says that he's nothing and asks him to get lost. Miro immediately runs out, and Malin compliments Yuma by saying what he did was cool, only to receive a hard slap from his father. Mr. Haka lectures to Yuma that he should have just held back. Malin asks if he was just going to leave Maria like that and says that he's disappointed. Haka turns angry after hearing this. Yuma soothes the situation by saying that what Mr. Haka said is right. If things went wrong, all of them, including Maria, would be in danger. Mr. Haka then tells them to get their things as they would have to leave Peril. Yuma says he has a plan which would require them to be separated for a while. Haka is at the gates of the Lord's place. The guards asks him what he's doing here. Haka thinks about Yuma's plan. He had told him to go to the Lord and get his help, and if he was with Maria, he'd be safe too. So he tells the guards that he's in a situation where he needs the help of the Lord. He then wonders how Yuma knows that the Lord is part of the pro-commoner faction. Haka had asked what he's gonna do. Yuma said he'd go to the capital because he knows someone who can take care of this situation. Mr. Haka then apologizes to Yuma and gives him his sword. With the sword, Yuma walks to the Hale Castle, the place he worked at for 40 years. He's excited to see it as it's been so long. He's even happier to see it when he's not a eunuch. He thinks Heller Rose would be there too. Before he regressed, she had told him about a place that he could go to when he wanted to run from the palace, even if it was to go away because of her. Yuma tries to push a block of granite like Hella had shown him. It opens up a secret tunnel, which Yuma crawls through. Even though it's exhausting, he keeps going just to see the Empress again. But he's committed several crimes like attempted murder of a knight, treason, and trespassing palace grounds. If he gets caught, they would rip his limbs off. Yuma reaches the other side of the palace and thinks that it smells weird. Hella liked to take walks in the garden so he would be able to see her from this place. Suddenly, Yuma hears noises and sees a knife in front of him. The man behind him, holding the sword, asks Yuma who he is. Yuma recognizes the voice to be Boris, the Imperial escort knight. Boris slices into his neck asking who he is again. Another voice behind them asks Boris to wait. A hooded figure appears. The person behind it removes the hood to reveal herself. It's Zishka Rose, the first princess. Yuma thinks how this was a wrong decision. He just trespassed in front of the princess and the escort knight. But then he wonders why they're here near the manure treatment plant. Yuma is asked what he's doing here and he says that he needed to take care of something within the castle. Zishka says that if a fool like him had something to do inside the palace, he should have entered through the gates. Then, Yuma explains why he's here. He says that when he was 7, his parents were killed by a magic strike. He was also fated to die that day, but a magician appeared and saved his village. Yuma had heard that he's an imperial magician and came here to meet him. Boris tells Zishka that he's suspicious and that they shouldn't talk to him. Zishka tells Boris he doesn't have the right to talk now. Boris asks for forgiveness, to which she laughs and says that she was joking. Zishka asks Yuma what the name of the magician is. Yuma says it was Adeline Woods. Seeing how calm he is, Zishka thinks he's being honest. She tells him that she would share the news with her and warns him not to come here again. Yuma thanks her and thinks how he almost died after reaching the capital. He makes a note to find another chance to find Adeline Woods, but he feels that something's odd. 1 year from now, Zishka commits treason and the person that kills her is Boris. They should be in a static relationship now, but they seem to be roaming together, especially next to a manure plant. Yuma is sure that something is going on. Yuma decides to deal with the Miro issue first. He'd have to use the Puang Merchant Union. Puang is known as collector of money to citizens and bringer of money to the nobles. Currently, Puang's main source of revenue may seem like expensive furniture and valuables, but in reality, the magic stones are imported from the Helga Kingdom and Haste Nation are the true source of income. However, in a few years, Puang discovers a way of manufacturing magic stones himself. After monopolizing on magic stone manufacturing, the Puang Merchant Union turns into an empire. At the entrance of the Puang Merchant Union, Yuma is stopped by the guards. He asks them to call Puang because he wants to talk to him. They ask him not to joke around, to which Yuma responds by breaking their spear in half with his sword. He asks them to not underestimate him and says that he's an escort of the Adeline family and threatens to slice their necks before him. Inside, Puang and Yuma introduce themselves to each other. Puang offers Yuma a rare tea that he got from the east. Puang sips the tea and states how wonderful it is. Yuma can't help thinking that this guy is the leader of the famous Puang Merchant Union. Puang soon asks what Yuma was here for. Yuma says he wants to strike a deal with him. He tells Puang that he wants to teach him how to manufacture magic stones. He also says that he lied about being an Adeline's escort. Puang is shocked that he impersonated someone but is more surprised that he's talking about manufacturing stones as it's impossible. Yuma thinks to himself how he's the one that figures it out in the future. Yuma then persuades him into signing a contract. If he ended up breaking the contract, he would agree to be a test subject for magicians. Puang then asks what Yuma wants. Yuma says that he almost killed a knight and asks Puang to take care of it. He says that attempted murder by a citizen is not something that money can solve. Yuma asks Puang to go to the gambling area operated by the Fapian family and asks him to look for the gambling-addicted knight Haewon Woods, and then says that they would use Haewon. Hwang goes to Haewon and asks if he heard rumors of Miro being attacked by a civilian. Haewon says he hates hearing Miro's name but has heard about this incident. Hwang tells him that the culprit is his nephew, Yuma. Haewon says he'd be sure to bring it up during the Council of the Elders. He then tells Hwang that he hopes to see him again soon as he needs more pieces like this, referring to a golden armor in front of him. Hwang thinks how it happened just as Yuma said. After this, Yuma and Hwang get down to magic stone business. Yuma explains the method to Hwang, starting with the grinding of magic stones into powder, sprinkling it on a field like seeds and watering with blood of animals. After this, an explosion would occur but the field could be protected with a single archmage. So Hwang says that they now need an archmage, but there aren't that many mages in the Empire. Yuma says that he has the right person. Although Kale Fabian was adopted into the family for his incredible talent, he's currently receiving unfair treatment because of his lack of relation to the family. Hwang then meets up with Kale Fabian. After introducing himself to Kale, Hwang is told to look for someone else if he needed the power of the Fabian family. That's why Yuma had previously told him how to start the conversation. He asked him to say that the only person he wished to discuss with is Kale, and that he has no need for people that only care about family ties. Hearing this, Kale bursts out laughing. Kale says Hwang is crazy for saying that. Even Hwang can't believe he said something like that here. But eventually, Kale stops and asks him what he wanted. Yuma says that all the parts are starting to gather. The Matin Kingdom should be perfect to maintain a magic stone field. He plans to borrow the land through Black Wolves and ask them to protect the land. The Matin Kingdom is the only kingdom that has withstood the attack from the Empire, despite multiple attempts. That was because the world's greatest mercenary corps, the Black Wolves, had settled there. They are aggressive towards outside soldiers and hate the Empire. Yuma says that since they hate the Empire, it'll be hard for them to come in and find out their magic stone farming. The next day, Hwang worriedly says that a man from the Empire is in Matin along with the three of them. Yuma assures that he would protect him, and Kale reminds him that he has an archmage with him too. Then Hwang says that if they can't win, at least they can make it out alive. Yuma and Kale jokingly say that they are all going to die together. When they finally reach the base of the Black Wolves, it seems deserted and no one is around. Suddenly, a knife appears over Yuma's shoulder, and a voice says that it's been a while. Yuma has no trouble recognizing Malin's voice. Malin asks him to raise his hands and turn around. After he does so, Malin gives him a hug. Meanwhile, another boy standing with a knife behind Kale demands to know what Malin is doing with a trespasser. Malin says that he's saying hi to an old friend. Earlier, Yuma had told Malin to go to Black Wolves and say that he hates the Empire, then they would accept him. Malin thanks Yuma as he is safe because of him. Before Yuma regressed, after Malin became Miro's apprentice, he gained the attention of Durin Zark and was adopted by him. While Malin's swordship took him far, he was still alone. An ordinary citizen became a noble and an adopted son of Durin. This was enough to make others jealous. Malin thought he'd get recognition if he became a knight. He had told Yuma all about how the noble-born are trying to push out the civilian-born out. All his pay goes out as equipment maintenance and they keep calling him to the battlefield. Malin wishes to join a mercenary corps instead. Malin asks Yuma why he's here. Yuma says he wanted to ask Commander Hugo a request. He asks Malin to tell him that a merchant, an archmage, and a citizen of the Empire are here. Malin says that it's very cocky for an invader to call to the commander, and says he would help Yuma if he won against him. Yuma asks Malin if he thinks he actually has a chance against him. They both continue to clash swords until Malin lands a kick to Yuma's head. Yuma then takes a swing at him but Malin dodges. Yuma tries to get him again but doesn't succeed. Watching this fight, Kale asks Hwang if Yuma came to him to ask for help. Hwang says that was indeed the case. Kale says that it seems a golden egg fell into his hands. Hwang replies this is too much for him. Meanwhile, Malin has Yuma pinned to the ground by his sword and asks if he admits defeat. Yuma agrees that he lost and asks Malin if he's satisfied. Malin says yes and asks him to follow him to meet the commander. When they finally reach Hugo, he says it seems like interesting things keep happening recently. Ogre Slayer, Hugo, is the only person in history to defeat an ogre, which are considered on par with dragons in one-on-one combat. However, before the Dragon Demon War, a member of the Black Wolves betrayed and killed him. If Hugo was alive during the war, there would have been lesser casualties. Yuma introduces himself, Kale, and Hwang to Hugo. Hugo asks Yuma if they are his men. Yuma says that they're his friends. Hugo comments how it's absurd for an ordinary citizen and a noble from the Empire to be friends. Yuma tells him that this isn't the Empire. To this, Hugo asks Yuma if he dares to mess with him. Yuma says that lonely people don't enjoy jokes. Hwang shivers in fear after listening to Yuma mock Hugo. Malin is stunned at this comment too. Hugo says that it seems like Yuma has the guts to back his words and so asks him what he wants. So Yuma asks Hugo if he knows what Muraks are. Hugo says he's aware of Muraks. According to the empire's hierarchy, nobles are under the royals, commoners are under nobles, slaves are under commoners, and livestock are under slaves. And underneath the livestock are the war refugees, the Muraks. Yuma explains to Hugo that he wants to bring the Muraks and create a field with Matin. Hugo says it looks like Yuma has no problem taking advantage of the weak. Hugo devastated 5 kingdoms during the war. He is the only reason behind the Muraks' numbers. Yuma tells Hugo that using them is better than neglecting them. He also says that rather than wasting their lives for pointless reasons, wasting your time repenting on the past benefits no one but the person in question. Impressed, Hugo says that Yuma was born with what it takes to be a warrior since Yuma is able to wield his tongue like a sword. Yuma thanks Hugo for the compliment. Hugo agreed to their terms without any negotiation. Since there isn't anyone that would dare to mess with him, this was bound to happen. Walking out of the room, after talking to Hugo, Yuma sighs in relief. It was scarier than he thought. He's sure that Malin pissed himself. Later, Yuma and Malin are sword fighting. Whilst fighting, Malin asks Yuma if he's going. Yuma tells him he just came here to get some rest before leaving. So they decide to duel again. While they fight, the others watch in shock thinking that there's another monster like Malin. They all wonder what the hell goes on in that fishing village, Peril. Suddenly, a spear comes flying at Yuma, slicing his cheek. He wonders who did it only to see that it is Cargo, the man who betrayed Hugo. He asks Yuma if he could get around with him. As they both fight each other, Yuma wonders if this man is really capable of killing Hugo. Both of them dodge each other's attacks skillfully and Cargo tells Yuma what he did was impressive. Yuma gives him the same compliment. Yuma realizes that he's strong but not as strong as Hugo, so he's bewildered how he was able to kill Hugo. While taking his leave, Yuma tells Malin to be careful of Cargo. Malin says Cargo seems like a good person. Yuma then yells at Malin to just listen to what he says. Then Yuma says to Hwang that he made another promise with Hugo. Hwang asks what it is and Yuma tells him that he has to find a bride for Hugo. Hugo had told Yuma to bring him a bride. Hwang is shocked that a human woman has to be with Hugo. Yuma mentions that Hugo is human too. Hwang is panicking over what would happen if Hugo had a human bride. Yuma then tells him that if they don't find him a bride, Hwang would be the one at his mercy of his hand. So they put up a flyer stating that the Ogre Slayer, Hugo, is looking for a woman and anyone interested should visit the Hwang Merchant Union. At the Hwang Merchant Union, many people have shown interest in being Hugo's bride. Hwang goes through them only to see that most of the volunteers are small families with only the intent of marrying for power. Yuma says that it's obvious because being the bride of Hugo means that you're putting yourself at risk of death while sleeping with him. There's no way a high noble would risk themselves like that. That's why these people from small families are risking their lives to bring honor to their nameless families. They don't care if their daughters die. Then Hwang tells Yuma that he'd said it takes a year to harvest magic stones, but he's worried that his union might go under before that. He says that with the bribes to Haywin, the Fabian family, and constant payment to the Black Wolves, he has so many expenses but not enough money. Yuma asks him not worry and tells him that they should focus on looking for a bride first. Hwang is angry that Yuma brushed him off just because it's not his problem. But Yuma is actually thinking about how to help Hwang. He thinks that he would need a noble to support Hwang. Yuma and Hwang wait for the candidates. Cindy Mew walks in and says that although she's fine with being Hugo's bride, she wants to make an offer first. When asked what it is, Cindy says she wants them to make her a secretary. She explains how she worked at the Fabian family's gambling ring, where she wore obscene clothes to bring up the mood. The noble Shirl would chat about anything and everything with her, including his secret storehouse. Eventually, Shirl tried to kill her for knowing too much. Cindy promises to reveal information regarding the Shirl family's secret storehouse and asks for protection in return. Hwang carefully thinks how the Merchant Union is in the spotlight because of Hugo, so it wouldn't be wise to get involved in this. He begins to say that this is too dangerous but is cut off by Yuma, who tells her that she passed. Hwang is shocked and says that she could be lying. But Yuma knows there's no way she'd lie. Cindy isn't an ordinary pub worker. She's actually a member of the Imperial Special Forces. She's investigating the Hwang Merchant Union on behalf of the Empress orders. But it could be really good for them to have someone from the Imperial Special Forces as secretary. Later that night, Yuma asks Malin and another man if it's okay that there's just 2 of them since there'd be 5 sword experts guarding the storehouse. Malin says he's stronger than Yuma thinks and the man says if the enemy is strong, he'd protect. Yuma notices his spears and wonders why he's carrying so many. Stealthily, Cindy leads them to the storehouse. At the entrance, they spot a man standing on guard. The man quickly takes out a bow and aims for the guard. Everyone is shocked that those spears were actually arrows. He kills the guard immediately and asks them to take care of the rest. Yuma thinks to himself how Hugo won't let Malin die, so he doesn't have to worry about that. Two guards stand, talking to each other, wishing that a lady would come by as it was fun before. The hand is clasped over his mouth and his chest stabbed from behind. The other guard turns around to see him missing. Before he can react, he is stabbed and killed too. Malin and Yuma talk about how they're supposed to be sword experts, but it was so easy to kill them. Suddenly, they hear someone saying that he was wondering where the stench of shit was coming from. He appears in front of them and says that there's rats crawling around. Yuma notices that he is able to handle sword aura. He asks the man if he wants to know what rat shit tastes like and attacks him. After battling for a while, the guard is exhausted and tells Yuma that he isn't bad. Yuma just tells him that he's disappointed him, and when his back is turned to him, he stays there unable to move, and Yuma kills him with one move. Soon, they stand at the entrance. Yuma asks Cindy how to open it. She tells him that they need to destroy it. The man immediately shoots arrows and breaks the steel doors, leaving Malin and Yuma in disbelief. When they enter the storehouse, they see piles of gold and treasures. Yuma thinks that with this, he can make the Union last 2 years. He takes whatever is required to give the Black Wolves and the rest to Malin and the man. Yuma is riding a horse carriage while thinking how he's solved one problem, but there's another issue. Once the merchant union grows, other problems are bound to occur. So now he'd have to find someone to support the Pwong merchant union. He thinks that he should find a noble for this. Later, Pwong hands Yuma a recommendation from Haewon and says that Yuma should be able to vanguard near the Yornir Plains. Yuma thanks him and Pwong asks why he's going to the battlefield. Yuma says he's going to convince Durin Zark to join them. Yuma explains his plan to first grab Durin's attention, attract him with his talent, and then make him an ally. But Yuma wonders how to get Durin's attention. Durin Zark was the person to accomplish the most during the Empire's conquest, having the greatest swordsmanship in the Empire, and the person to be compared the most to Hugo. He also has the favor of the current Empress. At the Yornir Plains, Yuma goes to the battle vanguard and tells a man that he's here with a recommendation. He hands Yuma a sword and armor and tells him that he'd be a footman for now. Walking by, Yuma comes across two men who mock and bully him, saying that he looks like a kid and asking him to come to their tent later. Yuma immediately drops the armor and sword. Yuma has been wondering how to get Durin's attention, and this is the perfect opportunity. He punches one of the guys and suddenly more people crowd around him asking what the hell happened. A military trial has been ordered as Yuma has defeated 20 men. Yuma kneels before Durin, who asks why he was recommended by Haewon and immediately beat up Durin's men. Yuma apologizes and Durin asks if he beat them all up with his bare hands and comments that he looks like an impressive aura user. He notices the aura coming off Yuma and Durin Zark then says that this is interesting. The men are also shocked that Durin likes him. Durin then says he needs to know what kind of person Yuma is, so he asks Centurion to beat him 20 times and then bring him to his tent. The man asks Durin how he's supposed to punish Yuma when Durin showed interest in him. After beating Yuma using a whip, the Centurion gives him some medicine and wishes him good luck. That night, Durin and Yuma talked. 1 month later, after Yuma put on the sword and armor that Durin specifically picked for him, he stood as the Centurion for the capture of the capital of the Armad Kingdom. During the battle, arrows come flying at them and Yuma tells the forces to surround themselves with aura, which leads to the arrows breaking in half. Then, spells are cast and hurled at them, but this too is blocked by Yuma. He leads the forces with confidence and grace, which impresses Durin. Soon, the capital had been captured. After the conquest, Yuma goes to Durin to return the sword. Durin asks him if he doesn't want it. Yuma looks at it and thinks carefully. The sword's name is Ascalon. Before his regression, this was the sword Damien Zark, Durin's first son, wielded. The steel used to forge it was the Serukan heavy steel that was only available near the eastern region of Seruka. There's nothing the Serukan steel can't cut or break, and it's considered a dream for any martial artist. Ascalon was already used to slay 2 dragons, so Yuma definitely wanted it. Noticing Yuma's expressions, Durin says that if he wants the sword, Yuma must become his adopted son. If Yuma hadn't regressed, he would have been tempted, so he just says that he likes being an employee of the merchant union. Then Durin asks for the sword back. Frustrated, Yuma negotiates that Durin could take him in as an apprentice. Durin says that it would be more beneficial if he could adopt him. Yuma says he doesn't want to be adopted, leaving Durin frustrated at Yuma's stubbornness. Durin thinks that maybe if he took good care of Yuma as an apprentice, he'd want to be adopted. So he tells Yuma that he would take him in as an apprentice. He then asks Yuma to go with him to the next war zone and asks him to be prepared as the Heiseo Nation warriors won't be as weak. At the Heiseo National Army camps, Durin, Zark, and Yuma are stopped by two soldiers. The men ask them what their objective is, and Yuma can't believe they came here to the camp by themselves. Commander Hechizu asks Durin and Yuma why they're here during a war. Durin tells him that they should have a battle of knights. Hechizu asks why they should oblige since they showed up out of nowhere. To this, Durin says that since he's here, there's no way Hechizu would be able to win the war. He then says that the same applies if he participated in the Battle of the Knights. So, he offers to send in Yuma. Hechizu agrees but says that if they won, Durin's head would be taken. Durin says of course and they agree to see each other in a week. Yuma and Durin head back to the Empire camps. Yuma tells Durin that he doesn't think about what if very much. This makes Durin chuckle and say that there's no way he's going to lose his head. He then says that it would be quicker for Yuma to die with the weak. So then the Battle of the Knights won't even happen. Yuma is shocked at what he's hearing and runs away to his tent. Grabbing his sword, he angrily calls Durin a senile old man. Heading out of the tent, he sees soldiers with spears coming towards him. Durin asks them to go at Yuma as if they're going to kill him. The first part of training is basics and the second is real battles. Durin says that since Yuma has already mastered the basics, they would move on to real battles right away. Durin tells Yuma that he would have to run 1,000 laps around the training grounds if he got caught. Spears come flying at Yuma but he effectively dodges them. He punches a soldier, knocking him out and holding him by the collar. He warns the rest to not come closer. Durin notes that Yuma hasn't killed any allies and says that he's doing well. He asks his nephew, Randall, what he would do in such a situation. Randall says it would be easier to kill a few. Yuma warns them again that he would kill them if they got closer. Randall goes up to him to attack but Yuma takes care of it. Durin laughs at Randall saying that he's an easy target. Yuma thinks that there's no end to the number of soldiers so it would be easier to target the leader. Randall furiously tells Yuma that he would be given death as a punishment for treason and attempted murder of a superior. Hearing this, the soldiers chant Randall's name. Randall tells Yuma that he must have heard of his nickname. Yuma asks if it is Diaper Knight Randall. Genius Knight Randall is one of the talented knights of the Zard family. He uses dual swordsmanship, but Yuma figured things would be okay since he has only one sword. Using his sword, Randall slices through Yuma's shoulder. Yuma thinks how Randall must be riled up because he provoked him, yet his attacks are sharp and precise. If Yuma made a wrong move he would die but he's happy. He could be using the Dragon Demon War as an excuse but he just wanted to battle with someone who's just as strong. Thinking this, he places his sword against Randall's shoulder. So Randall says that he can't believe Yuma approached him from behind. Feeling embarrassed, he asks Yuma to kill him. Yuma asks him how he can say such a thing. Taking the sword away, Yuma tells Randall that it was a great fight. Durin shows up and says that they would stop the training here. He asks the medic to take Yuma and treat him. After Yuma has been taken care of, Durin tells Yuma that he would have died if his attack had failed, and that he would have lost if Randall used both swords. He then tells Yuma that he would take Yuma around 3 years as an apprentice but only 2 as an adopted son. Yuma says that he would just beat him in 3 years. Suddenly, Yuma feels pain on his shoulder and he falls to the floor, clutching it, only to realize that Durin had attacked him. Durin tells him that he should have prepared a counter-attack if he's been struck. He continues to say that he's lived through death but he's still afraid of reopening his wounds. Durin says that it's because his subconscious holds half the control over his body. He tells Yuma that he must possess full control instead. Yuma is frustrated. He knows this is for training but Durin is ambushing him, no matter the time or place. He wonders if he should do the same. After night falls on the camp, Durin sneaks out past the guards to Durin's tent where he's sleeping. Drawing out his sword, he raises it in attempt to stab him. Suddenly, Durin is behind him asking if he wants to murder his master, and then says that it's something every apprentice should attempt. The guards outside hear the commotion and peep inside the tent to check on Durin, only to see that Durin is holding Yuma. He asks the soldier to take Yuma out. He says that they're going to train in 2 hours so Yuma would need to sleep a little. 2 hours later, Durin asks Yuma if he slept well. Yuma says no. Then, the training begins. Durin says Yuma would starve for the next 6 days. Yuma asks if he's trying to kill him. Durin says that he won't die from starving for 6 days. Yuma asks Durin how they would train. Durin says that he would train by counting the blades of grass. Then, taking of Yuma's shoes, Durin says that he won't just be counting but he would use his aura to wrap around each blade of grass while his eyes are closed and he is counting. Yuma comments how using aura is difficult enough with hands but Durin wants him to wrap around each blade of grass to count. Yuma doubts that this is even possible and so asks Durin to show him how he does it first. Durin takes off his shoes and says he would show him. Soon, he wraps his aura around the blades of grass, leaving Yuma astonished. Durin asks if he believes him now and Yuma says that he respects him. Yuma can't even imagine how Durin fought in the Dragon-Demon War, as well as the demons who killed him. On the first day of the training, Yuma felt hungry for the first time in a long time. On the second day, hundreds of blades of grass broke off because they couldn't withstand Yuma's aura. On the third day, Yuma felt as if he had become a stone carving. On the fourth day, a herd of cows passed by Yuma but he didn't open his eyes. On the fifth day, the endless visual and auditory hallucinations finally stopped. And on the sixth day, all of the energy Yuma harbored was depleted. And just like that, Yuma died. Everything around him seems surreal, so Yuma wonders if he's dead. He can't believe he's dead so soon after his regression, and especially by counting grass. Yuma vows to kill Durin for making him do the impossible. He screams out Durin's name and in moments, finds himself back where he was. He looks up to see Durin next to him, who says that this actually works while throwing away a bottle. Yuma asks him what just happened and Durin says that he wouldn't leave Yuma to die. He used the blood of an ogre as it's believed to give people life or death. He didn't think that it'd actually work, but it did. He then congratulates Yuma for wrapping his aura around the grass. Yuma, however, is shocked because he doesn't remember doing it. Durin then tells him that they would go fight now. Durin asks Hechizu if he's picked anyone good as it's been a week. Hechizu asks Durin to worry about himself as his head would fall off because of Yuma. Durin laughs and says that they would see about that. An announcer says that nobody is to interfere the Battle of the Knights. The loser will admit defeat and withdraw. If Kyle's side loses, they will guide Durin and his troops to Heiseo Nation. But if Durin's side loses, he will accept any action taken by Heiseo Nation. Yuma introduces himself as Kyle Empire's participating knight. Tensu is announced as the Heiseo Nation's pulverizer of the snowfield. Yuma has heard of Tensu before. There are 3 renowned families in the Empire: the Zark family of swordsmanship, the Fabian family of magic, and the Rolmandi family of spearmanship. Tensu crossed paths with Chaunan Rolmandi of spearmanship and sparred with him before. And on that day, Chaunan Rolmandi was left half dead. Tensu says it's discouraging that such a youngster is his opponent. Flinging his axe to the ground, he says that he has no intention of fighting without giving it his all. He runs towards Yuma wielding 2 axes. Yuma takes a swing at his attack, making him miss. The rest watch as the battle goes on. In anger, Hechizu asks him what cheap tricks Yuma is using. He says that there's no way his brother would lose to a brat like him. Yuma tells him that the older brother is spreading ashes on the honorable death of his younger brother. Hechizu furiously raises his sword at Yuma, who tells him to lower his sword unless he wants the Heiseo Nation to be annihilated. With that, the war ended. The Empire's troops did not spill one drop of blood. The news quickly spread through the Empire. The returning troops were welcomed back and the Empress praised Durin. And at that moment, Yuma was by Durin's side. At the palace banquet, Yuma stands above on the mezzanine and watches the banquet below. It's been a while since he touched the railing. Before his regression, the palace was his home, so it feels strange for him to be invited here. Suddenly, Heller Rose comes up to him and asks if he is Yuma. Yuma is surprised as she says that she has something to ask him. She asks if Durin made him drink ogre's blood. Yuma says Durin did it to revive him. She then asks him why he's asked her mother for ogre's blood again. Earlier, the Empress had asked Yuma what he wanted as he had made a great contribution. Yuma had told her he wants to research the blood of ogres. He'd thought that he would request Kale to conduct the research. To answer Hella, he says he wants it. She tells Yuma that it's worth a small nation. She then asks what he's planning on doing with such an item. She says that if he's using it for himself, she would not let him proceed. So that is it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. So if you like the video, then hit that like button and leave a comment for the next part. Most important, subscribe and press the bell icon for notification. I will meet you in the new video. Till then, bye.